Hey guys, today I'm going to be coloring with Caliart Art for the first time. This is the finished product of what I did. Now, I normally use Prismacolors, but I decided to purchase this Caliart Art marker set. I think the link is in the description below. Um, but it has a lot of colors to it. That's one thing that I like about it, and it wasn't terribly expensive. It wasn't as expensive as Prismacolor, which is what I normally use as a student and as a teacher. I have always used Prismacolor because it's the best quality that I can afford, basically. But this Caliart is something that my students had been buying, and I wanted to see if it was, okay to use. But I think the key factor is making sure that you buy a pack that is large enough that you have some kind of range of color. Because this Victorian sofa is kind of like peachy pink and it's got some light wood surrounding it, I needed to have enough colors so I could build a bridge. So these are the colors that I've decided to use for my wood frame. And then now the best thing for you guys to do is always to have a color reference chart. Put a little dab of color and then write whatever reference number this is. They use like letters and numbers. Prismacolor has names to it, so this one doesn't have names, but this is what I'm using for maybe my possible options for the actual sofa. Okay. So I've already drawn this sketch because I want to focus on rendering rather than the sketch part of this. The Caliart has a fine tip like this, so it's got a little stroke, which is similar to Prismacolor, and then they have a chisel end. Now their chisel end is very rigid. It's or rectilinear. I don't like it, that part as much. The Prismacolor, it's kind of rounded chisel, so I like the way you can kind of rotate it as you do a stroke. So that's one thing that's different. Now this color, I want to make sure that the packaging matches the color. So it doesn't seem like it matches it all that well. This guy right here, it's supposed to be a light color, and I mean it is, similar to it. The stroke is not that bad. It's not as bad as I thought it was going to be. But so right now I'm giving a base color just as if I were using Prismacolor. I always layer on my colors, even if it's a quick sketch. I don't like it when it's just one single color. I just like to play with color. I like color. So I am giving it the base color as the to start with. So I'm paying attention to where is it light, where is it dark, where is it medium. But this is my very first color. And it is a kind of complicated in that there's like tufting. So I'm just kind of lightly showing where that is. And then we'll kind of go from there. But I'm going to go ahead and give everything some kind of color and outline where the pink's supposed to maintain to be kept pink. And then a little bit on the seat. And I'm trying to make sure that wherever it's supposed to be light, it's going to stay light. So this is a good color base. I like this color. It's fine. It's close enough to the cap that it doesn't bother me. Now this is my next color. So now this looks a little bit darker than the package. Maybe not. I mean, it's a little darker, but that's why the color reference is so important. Because sometimes, I mean, I've even had it with my other brands that I use where I am not paying attention, and until you know the names or the numbers that are your go-to numbers, you might accidentally grab something that you didn't mean to grab. So I'm using this color for my wood base right now. It was supposed to be for my darker areas of my my seat cushions, but this looks like it could be a light color version of my framing. So I'm going to go ahead and use it for my framing instead of my seat, because I had it, you know, for the shadows of my seat, but I think the tone of it, I'm better off using it for my leg and my frame. So make sure you create a color reference sheet, because I think the tricky part of this is that until you know what each of these numbers mean, it's hard to figure out and grab things as you go and render. Whereas when I'm using Prismacolor, I know exactly what color I need to create whatever formula I'm trying to hit. And that's just because I've been using it for such a long time. But they're not named, they're just numbered, and that's, to me, it's a little tricky. Now this is the next color. Let's do a little stroke here. This stroke here, if you look at the top, I think it looks a lot darker. You think it's going to be a light color, but it actually becomes a darker color. So, but I'm going to go ahead and use this as the kind of transition between my very first application and this particular application. So it becomes my bridge of value. When I do renderings, I try to create some kind of range of value so it doesn't look super flat. I like things to have some kind of sense of volume when I'm rendering it. So I'm going to go ahead and use it throughout my composition, where the deeper parts of the tufting will occur, and so it has a sense of depth in those crevices right there. So now I'm going to go ahead and show you the 3 colors that I've used so far to create this composition. So the tops, you can see they look really light. So that guy is this one. This one's supposed to be my light value. But those are the 3 colors that I've used so far. So they do come off a little bit darker than their tops suggest they would be. So, I mean, that's a normal thing for a lot of brands, I think. So you have to make sure you have a color reference sheet. So I'm going to go ahead and use that again to kind of layer things. I'm going to go back to the lightest shade I have and create that bridge between my dark value and my lightest value. So not only do I have white and the dark colors, I have the light and the light medium colors. Now this next color looks like it would be a good family, but I don't know. It could be like where the buttons could be. So I'm going to try that. I mean, it's dark. I don't know if maybe it's a little darker than I wanted it to be, but I'm going to go ahead and use it as value, and then if I need to come backwards, I'll just use a lighter value. But this is, you can see from the cap what it's supposed to be. I think it's a lot darker than the cap suggests it's supposed to be. So. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and put that one away for now. I mean, it did go darker, but you know, I have to go dark eventually. I'm going to try this color here. Now, here's the top to that. Let's see, let me do a little test run. It's just a little bit darker than the cap, but I think I can use it for my, like the darker crevices for my wood framing. So I'm going to go ahead and use that and draw that around. I normally, for Prismacolor, I use the chisel end, almost predominantly it's the chisel end. But for the Caliart, the chisel end is okay for some areas, but it's harder to use for the fine tip areas. And so I found myself using more the fine tip, whereas normally for the framing, I would have used the chisel end if I were using Prismacolor. All right, so now that I've done that, I'm going to go ahead and try to find something for my button tufting area. The one I had used before was a little dark, so I'm going to go ahead and use something where it could be a medium version of that. The cap has it more of muted, but I think it comes back down a little darker than the cap. I mean, a lot darker. But I'm going to go ahead and use it anyway and see if I can save it. All right, so that might be the crevice area. I'm going to look for my shadows where this velvet wraps around the arms. It bundles around the arms so that it gathers there where the seat tucks in. You can use that part. Now I'm going to go ahead and use the older one. I think that the second color I had used before where I'm doing my medium, and I'm going to go ahead and make my medium tones. So I have, you know, a little bit more of a range for the medium tones now. So I'm going to go ahead and fill in and just not have as much white. I do want to keep some of the white areas for the highlight of the velvet, but I'm trying to find a bridge between that super dark value that I had and all the light that I have. So I'm going to go ahead and go over the dark values and try to bridge that gap of color. Alright, so now that I've done that, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to use the next color. So this is might be like a yellow gold kind of color. And I'm going to go ahead and come back and do the wood framing. So I think this again is a little bit darker, but I am going to go ahead and finish out the framing area because it had been too dark versus too light. So I'm trying to fill out the medium ground of that area. And I'm using my chisel in because it's a little thicker and I want it to cover a little bit more. I don't have to be as precise with where my shadows will be. Alright, so right now I notice that there's some bleeding that's occurring on top of my layers. And I mean, that doesn't bother me that much. It could be worse. Alright, this is a dark gray that I'm using for my shadow areas. So this is where it's going to go super dark in some of this gathered area here. I'm going to define the seat tufting a little bit more to kind of hide the bleeding that had occurred earlier. Maybe define the tufting a little bit, the rhythm of that a little bit more over here in the back. So I knew I was going to have to go darker. It's just I didn't like it so early in the game, I guess. Now this one, it's a little bit dark here, a little bit dark here, and you know, wherever the wood crevices are, definitely on the underside of the legs, I want it to go a little bit darker. And again, this is a quick sketch rendering. I just wanted to test out my markers. And some little details here. Okay, so that dark value, it's pretty dark. It's a dark gray. It doesn't seem to be, the kit doesn't have a lot of different grays. That's the one drawback. This is a light gray that I'm using to kind of build a bridge between that very dark gray that I had just used and trying to define the channels a little bit and the tufting. Trying to find that straight, the front edge here, and then just trying to define some of these edges without losing the back light value. So I'm going to define the tufting a little bit more. And go from there. All right, I think I like that that bit of gray. It defined the channels a little bit more because it was getting lost because some of the colors were too similar. It needed a little bit of contrast. That was the lightest gray I could find in my kit, and the other gray was really, really dark. So they probably could expand on their grays a little bit. I'm going to go back and use my older colors now to kind of fill in some of the white areas because now I want to just maintain where I want to see white. So that it looks like a rich velvet. So I'm going to go a little bit higher some of these areas and define the channels a little bit more with the color. Maybe up here in the foreground, in the seat. Something like that, maybe. Okay, and then I think I just need to add a shadow. So I'm going to use the lightest gray that I have again, and I'm going to give it a little shadow underneath. So even the lightest gray, it's pretty dark. I think this would be like a 30% gray if I was using Prismacolor. All right, so something like this, so it doesn't look like it's floating in outer space. But I think overall, I'm pretty pleased with this Caliart, at least the pinks. The set that I have has a lot of a range of the pink family. So if that's what you were looking for, I think it's totally doable to use Caliart to render. But again, I'll have to test out the other families of colors. But these are the colors I used in particular for this sofa. All right, I hope that helps you, and I'll see you next time.